In a small village in Indonesia, there was an old legend that said no child should ever step outside after dusk, because in the narrow gap between day and night, demons would awaken, and anyone wandering at that hour could easily catch their attention. Once a demon had its eyes on you, death itself would come to claim you. But there were always those who didn't believe in such things. A group of students had just finished a soccer game, and the sky was slowly darkening. Their teacher suggested they stop by a nearby mosque to pray, to avoid attracting unclean spirits, since sunset was believed to be the hour when demons roamed. But one substitute player refused outright. He wanted to go straight home and didn't want to stay any longer. It turned out there had been a heated argument during the match between the starting players and the substitutes, and they didn't want to see the starters' faces again. Yogo, standing nearby, wanted to step in and calm things down, but the other substitute players had already started agreeing one after another. So he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth and reluctantly followed the group onto the truck to leave. The teacher tried to call them back, but the kids completely ignored him. By now, the sky had turned pitch black, yet they still hadn't reached home. The driver was cheerfully chatting with Wulan, who was sitting in the passenger seat, completely unaware that a man had suddenly stepped into the middle of the road. They couldn't brake in time and hit him head on. When everyone rushed out of the bus in panic, the man was already dead. The kids quickly grabbed banana leaves to cover his body. Wulan sat alone in the truck, trembling with fear, too scared to approach. Just then, a strange and eerie whisper came into her ear. When Yogo turned to look, Wulan was nowhere to be seen. She had already fallen under the spirit's spell and was walking into the forest, following the dead man's ghost. When she came to her senses, she realized she had been cursed. At that moment, a dark spirit stood silently behind her. The other children, worried that Wulan might be haunted by the demon, split up and began searching for her in the forest. Indro, being the oldest, chose to act alone, but he hadn't taken more than a few steps when he saw a terrifying scene. Meanwhile, Yogo kept searching when he suddenly heard slow, heavy footsteps approaching from behind. When he turned around, he was horrified to find that Wulan was holding a large rock with both hands, about to smash it down on him. At the critical moment, the driver suddenly shouted, and thus Wulan failed to succeed. But the next instant, her body went limp, as if her soul had been pulled away, and she collapsed unconscious. No matter how loudly Yogo called, she didn't respond. Soon, the police arrived at the crash site after receiving the driver's call. Villagers and the parents of the missing kids also rushed to the scene. There had been 8 children on the bus, but now only Yogo and Wulan made it home safely. The other 6 had vanished without a trace. Though Wulan returned home, she was pale and lifeless, refusing to speak a single word. That night, Yogo dreamed he was happily playing soccer again with his friends, but suddenly, the 6 missing children appeared with their backs turned to him, standing motionless. Yogo jolted awake from the nightmare, his fear making it hard to breathe, so he ran to the kitchen to drink some water and calm himself down. Just then, he suddenly heard his dog outside, barking frantically in terror. He slowly opened the door, and what he saw made him freeze in place. Wulan was crouching on the ground, holding a blood-stained knife, while the family dog lay lifeless in a pool of blood. She slowly turned her head and stared straight at Yogo with a cold, empty gaze. It was clear that she had been possessed by the evil spirit. Yogo's legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor. When he looked outside again, Wulan was gone. What he didn't know was that she had quietly entered the house. His aunt heard the commotion, rushed out of her room, and found Yogo trembling on the floor. She shook him awake. After regaining his senses, Yogo quickly went to Wulan's bedroom and found her lying on the bed, fast asleep. He stood outside the door, dazed and confused, unsure if what had just happened was real or just a nightmare. But what he didn't know was that Wulan's hands were still covered in fresh blood. The next morning, the parents and villagers continued searching for the missing children. They scoured every inch of the forest but found nothing. Just then, 3 men were horrified to discover a skinned cat lying on the ground, and the entire forest was littered with the bodies of tortured animals. Elsewhere, the teacher led a prayer for the missing students, hoping they would return safely. But Yogo noticed that Wulan wasn't praying. Instead, The corners of her lips lifted slightly, her eyes glinting with a strange sense of satisfaction, even amusement. After class, Anas went to wash his face in the restroom when he saw a figure rush past him. It looked like a girl. Curious, he stepped forward to take a look. Then Wulan's voice suddenly echoed from behind. Hearing the noise, Diwo ran out from the stall, shaking Anas and asking what happened. But Wulan had already vanished, and Anas slowly calmed down. On their way home, the three boys watched Wulan's back in silence. Yogo told them what had happened the night before, but admitted he wasn't sure if it had been real or just his imagination. He frowned and said that ever since the night in the forest, Wulan had changed completely. Dewo then remembered something. His grandfather once told him that, about 20 years ago, a group of children had mysteriously disappeared at dusk, though one was later found. But that child's personality changed drastically. He killed many animals and eventually hanged himself. Hearing this, Yogo became even more worried about Wulan. Then they heard hurried footsteps behind them. Villagers were running toward the front, their faces filled with panic. The three boys followed and soon saw the same horrifying sight, 2 more skinned animals lying on the ground. Everyone believed the missing children had angered the demon, and this was the punishment. Seeing this scene, Yogo was reminded of what had happened the night before, and he couldn't help but start suspecting that Wulan was the one behind it all. Without having time to say goodbye to his friends, Yogo ran all the way home, pushed open Wulan's bedroom door, and found her lying on the bed, fast asleep. His aunt said that Wulan had come home from school feeling sick and had been sleeping ever since. Hearing that, Yogo finally breathed a sigh of relief. That meant the mutilated animals outside weren't her doing. He sank onto the couch, exhausted, and soon drifted off to sleep. But before long, he felt that same cold stare again. Wulan's eyes fixed on him, sending chills down his spine. Fortunately, his aunt appeared just in time to break the eerie tension. Meanwhile, at Anton's house, there was an unsettling sense of unease that words could not describe. When he heard a knock at the door, he immediately went to open it. But strangely, there was no one outside. Yet as soon as he closed the door, the missing children were standing right outside his window, though he didn't notice them. The children stood silently in the dark, their pale eyes staring at him through the glass. When he looked up, he was horrified to see Endro standing in his house, with his back turned to him in a strange posture. What made his skin crawl even more was that 5 other children were standing behind Endro, each with ghostly white eyes. The whole house fell silent, and the only sound left was Anton's pounding heartbeat. The scene then shifted to Anas's home. He was on the phone when the door slowly creaked open, and once again, Endro appeared in that same eerie posture. Anas froze in place. Panic washed over him, and his breathing grew rapid. He stumbled backward, trying to reach the back door, but before he could escape, 4 other children had already blocked the way. In the end, he was surrounded by the 6 of them. Hearing strange noises over the phone, Dewo guessed that Anas might be in danger and immediately ran toward his house. On the way, he ran into Yogo, who had just finished a delivery, so the 2 of them went together. They sprinted forward in a panic, completely unaware that night was about to fall. According to their village's tradition, no one should ever go out at dusk. But fearing for Anas's safety, they ignored the ancient warning and kept running toward his house. When they finally arrived, they found 3 of their missing classmates standing in the road, blocking their path. The other 3 were perched on the rooftop. All 6 of them fixed their horrifying gazes on them, their faces frozen in eerie expressions. Moments later, Endro moved first, and the other 5 followed, charging at Yogo and Dewo. Hearing the commotion, nearby villagers tried to help, but as soon as they approached, the children struck them down mercilessly. Yogo desperately tried to wake his friends from their trance, but they were no longer human. They were like demons, attacking anyone they saw without hesitation. Fortunately, Yogo and Duo knew the village roads well and were agile enough to evade the attacks. But soon they began to tire, their pace slowing down. Just as the possessed children were about to catch them, a loud screech of brakes echoed from the crossroads. It was Addie, who had arrived in his truck and shouted for them to get in. Yogo and Dewo, seeing their only chance at survival, pushed themselves to the limit and leaped onto the truck. As the vehicle sped away, they finally escaped danger. Not long after, the 6 missing boys dragged their captured classmates together. Anas was among them. Then Wulan appeared, walking slowly toward them, her sharp, terrifying gaze fixed on her prey. She had long been possessed by the demon, and was now the one controlling everything. The 6 boys, now nothing more than soulless puppets, stood quietly by her side. awaiting her command. Suddenly, the evil spirit that had possessed Wulan revealed its true form, and Anna screamed in horror at the sight. Meanwhile, Addie looked at the terrified Yogo and Duo and decided to tell them the truth. Their classmates had been taken over by an ancient demon, a creature that hunted children's souls and could possess humans. Addie knew all of this because 20 years ago, his best friend had gone through the exact same thing. It was also during dusk when his friend had cursed his teacher in anger, even wishing death upon him. After that, a series of misfortunes struck the village, and the teacher died, mysteriously. His friend soon became like an empty shell, torturing animals, killing his own family, and finally ending his own life. Addie was supposed to be the demon's next vessel, but for some unknown reason, it had spared him. The next morning, the janitor was the first to discover the children who had been killed the night before, their bodies lying scattered across the cold, hard ground. Soon after, the villagers held a funeral for them. Across the river, Addie's gaze wandered through the crowd and accidentally met Wulan's eyes. His expression instantly grew grave. He could tell right away that Wulan was now the demon's new host, because the cold darkness in her eyes was exactly the same as the one he had seen 20 years ago. Moments later, Wulan disappeared into the crowd, but the next second she suddenly appeared right beside Addie. She warned him not to go against her, saying that with his strength he could never save the children. Addie glared at Wulan, his eyes filled with the anger and hatred he had suppressed for 20 years. He swore that he would destroy the demon no matter what, but the demon only mocked him for overestimating himself. Then it revealed its true form and slowly moved away from Addie. Addie forced himself to suppress the rage inside him, and when he looked up again, Wulan was already back across the river, smiling at him with a chilling expression. Not long after, Addie handed sacred charms to Yogo and Dewo, instructing them to hang them on Wulan's bedroom door and on every door in the house. He said this would prevent Wulan from leaving. They hurried home and immediately began their task. At that moment, Wulan and her aunt had just returned from the funeral. Yogo and Dewo froze in fear at the sight of Wulan, who was clearly possessed by the demon. Wulan also noticed the charms hanging on the doors, and a surge of resistance rose within her. She let out a furious scream. At that critical moment, Addie arrived, pressed a rune against Wulan's forehead, and began reciting an incantation. But just before he could finish, a guard and 2 villagers burst in, tackled Addie to the ground, and accused him of being a child trafficker. Earlier, Wulan had secretly told the guard that Addie was suspicious, urging him and the villagers to keep an eye on him. Now, she stirred up the chaos further, claiming that Addie was an evil man and accusing him of being a sorcerer who used dark magic to control Yogo and Duo. Terrified, the villagers grabbed Yogo and Duo, holding them tightly to stop them from moving. Addie, pushed to his limit, struggled with all his strength, broke free from the guard's grip, and grabbed Wulan by the neck, trying to force the demon to reveal itself. The villagers panicked and rushed to restrain Addie. Taking advantage of the chaos, Yogo and Duo slipped out of the house. Soon, word spread throughout the village that Addie had been captured. Everyone believed he was the murderer and came rushing to condemn him. Meanwhile, Wulan quietly made her way to the broadcasting station. She knocked out the radio announcer, slipped into the recording room, and began to sing a strange and eerie song. As her song echoed through the loudspeakers, all the children were drawn in by her dark enchantment. Their eyes turned white, and their consciousness faded away. Like puppets controlled by invisible strings, they began walking in the same direction. Even Yogo and Dewo were not spared. Soon, every entranced child vanished without a trace. Then, the 6 boys who had disappeared earlier reappeared, each holding a sickle in their hands. Addie pleaded with the guard to release him, saying that he was the only one who could save them. But the guard still hesitated. After all, Addie was still a suspect, and he was afraid to take responsibility, not daring to untie Addie's ropes recklessly. Yet chaos had consumed the village, and the children were in grave danger. After a brief struggle with himself, the guard finally untied Addie's ropes. The situation was dire. Under the villagers' cover, Addie dashed outside, while the others stayed behind to fight the 6 possessed boys. Addie quickly thought about where the children might have gone, and then he suddenly remembered Wulan's words. She had said she would kill everyone at the graves. He ran straight to the cemetery, and just as he feared, all the missing children were there. By now, the demon had fully revealed its true form and was using Wulan's body to control the others. Addie couldn't bear to see Wulan suffer any longer. He offered himself in exchange, begging the demon to spare Wulan and the children. He even offered his own soul in exchange for their safety. The demon had been coveting Addie's soul for more than 20 years, so it immediately accepted the deal. To its surprise, even after possessing Addie's body, it couldn't fully control him. Using the last fragment of his willpower, Addie began chanting the sacred spell. The children screamed in agony, and even the demon itself couldn't withstand the power of the incantation. Addie, relying on his willpower, struggled tenaciously against the demon. For the sake of all the children, he sacrificed himself, leaping into the river and ending his life together with the demon. In the end, all the children returned to normal. Addie was forever remembered by the people of the village, and that was the complete story of the 2025 Indonesian horror film Waktu Maghrib 2. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.